Coming up on today's episode,
my fellow peers were sort of saying I get really anxious before I go off and do this certain hobby, and it's crippling me, you know. And our tutor, who's been doing this for many, many years, said it really is about retraining your brain. You need to tell yourself, I can do nothing about this in this moment. And we're all like, oh, does that work? And she's like, yes, but it takes commitment. And again, we're back to there where you have to continue to feed your brain these things. So if you are sick of people pleasing, or you are sick of getting anxious about going to the school, or whatever that looks like, and you lie there in bed at night worrying about these things, every single night you need to say to yourself, I could do nothing about this now. I could do nothing about this now. And slowly your brain will retrain itself.
Welcome to Spirit in Sass, the podcast where intuition meets attitude and real talk gets a little more magical.
Hosted by us, Kelly Clark
and Jodie Mayhead.
This is your space for soulful insight, honest conversations, and a few laughs along the way.
It's always such a surprise. We wait in anticipation to see if we've nailed this and we're actually going to get to see ourselves on the stage.
Oh dear, we'll get that. Soon it'll be seamless. We'll just be like all polished and hi, lovely to see you again.
Absolutely,
and, you know,
definitely.
So. But welcome back. It is great to see you or you hear us again. Yeah, it's great to be here.
So today's episode 4. So we're getting there. We're racking them up now. We're on a roll.
Racking them up.
We are. So today's episode is you're doing the work, but are you actually? Now, Cal and I have just been talking about this one actually, because it's not dissimilar to things that we've spoken about in our previous episodes. And we've had a quick chinwag like we do beforehand. And actually, we're both quite on the same page with kind of, what this episode might look like, and the angle that we were both thinking about when we read that title.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned, which was really interesting, is first of all, defining what we mean by doing the work.
Absolutely. I think that's a buzzword that we have said loads in our previous episodes, and online you'll see it. It's it seems to be quite an on trend in topic. And I think part of doing the work would very much, people would kind of assume it's, you need to be kind of meditating, journaling, practicing your gratitude, sitting with crystals, listening to lots of podcasts, doing 1,000,001 courses, your EFT tapping, obviously, or your breath work, your Kundalini yoga, obviously a therapist, talking therapy. I'm a huge fan of all things like that. But there is a lot of things out there that can be classed as doing the work. And it can probably be a bit overwhelming, actually, on knowing where to begin and what I think is going to have the most impact on you to make change.
And I think we've got to understand that life is bloody hectic. We're running around trying to do 1,000,000 things. And when somebody goes, well, I've been sat there journaling this morning with my coffee, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I barely just managed to wash my hair and get out the door. So, it's really important that we don't become overwhelmed by all these things that we think we should be doing, because ultimately it doesn't really matter what it is that you are doing, as long as it is making you feel better about yourself, and it is supporting you on your journey and getting you towards the goals that you want to get to. So first things first, don't beat yourself up. If you're not up at 5:30 doing your Kundalini yoga, your breath work, grounding, and, then doing your hours journal, and then your little loves get up out of bed and magically get themselves dressed and there's no stress whatsoever, because I can tell you it certainly isn't happening like that in my household. But there are a few things that I have managed to etch into my routines, just small manageable things that I try to do consistently, just to kind of try and get my mindset correct. And I'm sure everybody has certain things that they do to try and kind of keep a positive mindset or bring them up. But there's also a big piece on self-reflection, isn't there? And understanding what you might have said or done that you could have done differently in order to do things better next time. But that in itself is great. But what we're really talking about today is, are you doing that work in order to make change, or are you just doing those bits and pieces to make yourself feel better? And that in itself isn't a problem, because feeling better is great, but it's what is your goal in doing all this work, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think as well, it's very easy to kind of confuse consuming info, listening to podcasts, getting really knowledgeable about, I don't know, circumstances that are similar to yours or what other people are doing. It's so easy. There's so much resource out there now that we can get so fixated on getting all this info and that we think we're doing the work, but actually consuming information is not transformation. That is just consuming information, which we need. We need info to be able to really start to reflect and work out. But primarily, it's all about the change that's got to happen to make the transformation follow. But I think as long as we feel we're busy researching, journaling, doing that we're in that moment of healing and making the change. And actually, to a certain extent, nothing happens quickly. I'm not saying this is a very quick process, but over time you have to be actually actioning and going forwards. Another podcast, another self-help book probably is not going to at that point make the change that you're desiring.
It has to come from within, and you also have to decide what change you want to make, and that's very much about boundaries. I've told you all I'm studying to become a psychotherapist, and I'm a real big believer, we've just said, in talking therapies. And one thing that's come up for me is my self-deprecating sense of humor, and I think probably I'm going to throw the whole British sense of humor in there. But I've always had it, and it did come from, I was much larger and I felt that I needed to get in there with the quick quips before anybody else got in there before them. But actually, over time, that humor has become a part of me. And actually, I quite like it. It's who I am. I do practice positive self-talk and things like that, but it's part of what makes me me. And so my boundary is, yes, okay, we could analyze my self-deprecating sense of humor to the nth degree, but I'm happy with that because that makes me who I am. And I understand enough about myself to know when it's bordering on, actually, Kelly, you're talking down to yourself, so there is an understanding there of, what works for you and what doesn't, so yeah, don't analyze yourself so much that you end up questioning even the bits about yourself that you really like.
Absolutely, because I think we could all just put ourselves under continuous scrutiny. And again, there is so much wealth of information for self-help now that it can actually almost be a bit of a trigger to then you overanalyze yourself. And we're not robots. We all have individual personalities, things light us up in different ways. That's what makes us beautifully individual and human. And like you said, so there's a difference between being aware. So you have an amazing sense of humor. Like, you make me properly belly laugh every single day. And you're very much aware of it, and you're happy to take the piss out of yourself as much as, I am or whatever. But you're very much aware that there was a time, if you were certainly a little bit more maybe insecure about image or whatever, that you almost were doing it to get the jibes in there then, because so nobody else had the need to say it because you are aware and it wouldn't hurt as much.
Yeah.
Well, you've taken that on board. And so now your sense of humor is 100% still absolutely on point and bloody hilarious, but it's not coming from a self-preservation, protection kind of motive anymore of, look, I'm just going to put this out there now so that nobody else kind of touches on this, or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is that, and that's the difference, and that's the kind of where the awareness it truly lies. But it doesn't mean that now you can only talk positive, high vibe things and not have a bit of a laugh or take the piss every now and again, because
but that's where it's about exactly, that is who I am. But that's the key, I think, is understanding who you are and what parts of yourself you're happy with and what parts of yourself you're not. I mean, I'm working really hard on my judgment side of things. I've been doing this for years. There'd be a time where I see somebody wearing something. God, I'm going to sound like a real bitch now. But I go back the years and I'd see somebody wearing something that maybe didn't look, and I'd be like, oh, crikey, she probably shouldn't be wearing that or something, And what an awful, awful thing to even think, because I'm hardly like,
just being very honest.
Well, I'm hardly wandering around looking like, supermodel. I'm not coming off Tyra Banks's, American Model, whatever it is, So I'm really working hard on actually, and I'm better, so much better with that, people can wear what the bloody hell they want. If they feel good in it and they look good in it, do you know what? You just go for it, and I'm very much a little bit like that now. Probably, shouldn't be in a bikini, or whatever. But, do you know what? Sod it. I'm happy in it. I feel good in it. So I'm going to wear it. So I've worked really hard over the years on removing judgment.
Yeah.
And so I know, inside of yourself what needs work for you to feel more comfortable in who you are and who you're becoming. So don't allow somebody to tell you what your boundaries are or not, or what you need to do to improve yourself. But, that's for you to decide what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think as well, we've spoke in previous episodes about kind of, we've all got, amazing parents. They all absolutely do their best, just like we do our best. So I absolutely don't profess to kind of get parenting 100% right. If anybody knows me, my family, my children, they would be like absolutely not love. But I absolutely hand up high, I do my best. But
amazing.
We absorb a lot through childhood. And whether I'm rightly or wrongly saying this, but I think generations have changed, but there was a time when people were very forefront in speaking their total truth, and even now, like, sorry mum, sorry dad, but they've got much better themselves. But we definitely like, oh my goodness, did they not look in the mirror before they left the house? And out it comes, and you're like, oh. But actually, and so there was a time like you, I would have thought the same, because that's kind of learned behaviors, and that, and for a lot of us, that's kind of probably a first thought. But actually, very much now, I almost, because I switch it and I think, God, I would love to have their confidence to just wear what they want to wear and feel confident and comfortable in it. I've seen Kel in a bikini and she absolutely rocks it.
You have to say that.
Oh, you do, because sexiness comes from confidence and ownership.
Oh, I love you so
So
much.
it's all about reframing it. I'd say, but I came across a fantastic little nugget a little minute ago when I was just kind of doing a little bit of kind of research. We don't tend to go wild on the research because we find we flow better without it. But to kind of go on this whole, like, are you doing the work, but are you actually? And we spoke a lot about this. But I came across this one-liner and it absolutely was a bit of a hallelujah moment for me. And it was very much about aware. You have awareness. Okay, we all have awareness of kind of, what we would like to change, or our own issues, or what we need to work on. And as we've said, nobody is perfect. You're never going to get to being perfect. That isn't possible. That doesn't exist. What is perfect for one person isn't for another. You're never going to get that. But we all have an awareness, and we all do the research, and we all absolutely consume ourselves with whatever it is we're trying to do, change, grow. After that comes the acceptance. So whether it be childhood trauma or, whatever, or, where we lack boundaries, whatever is the acceptance, we can probably, most of us, get to that stage. We can get to a point where we accept things about ourselves. It's from here on that it stops. And that's where then you get the action. And that is making the actual physical changes, albeit small ones. You need to start making the changes. You need to start taking action. From that is the repetition. So you start to build these little actions, these little changes, time and time and time again. And that's where the repetition comes in. Once you've done that, then you see the change. And I think for so many of us, we get stuck at the kind of awareness acceptance stage. We research the hell out of things, but never get as far as starting to take small little actions to move actually physically towards a change.
Yeah, and you can kind of measure that progression not through kind of effort, but through your behaviors. I can sit there and say, well, many years ago I was aware that I was a judgmental cow. I'm still aware that but I'm not. Awareness is one thing, but my behavior has changed. I don't look at somebody now and think that. I look at somebody and think, bloody fair play to you. So I have measured my progression by the fact that my behavior has changed. And I think the problem with this is once you have that awareness, acting on it is difficult. It's not easy, because the minute you have awareness of something that isn't, and let's face it, we're not going, oh, I love this about myself, so I'm going to change, are we? The things we want to change are the things that don't make us happy about ourselves. And that can sometimes mean addressing problematic things in our life. And again, we've been down this road, but maybe that is the relationship you're in. Maybe that is the job that you are in, the house that you're living in, the friendships that you are in. So the minute you have, that's the reason why a lot of people don't move from that awareness stage into that action stage, is because it means having to take a step out of that comfort zone. So we can have all the awareness that we want, but sometimes awareness will keep us in that comfort zone because we need the courage to act on making that change. So awareness is great. It's the first step. And some people don't even have self-awareness. So if you're listening to this and thinking, yeah, I'm quite self-aware, great, because a lot of people out there don't have that. So well done you. But how are we going to move from that awareness now through to that change? How much do you want it? That's really, how unhappy are you within those points of yourself and your life that you're willing to move forward now with that change?
Yeah, I think, awareness, whilst we're still in the awareness and we're in the preparation stage and we're doing the research and we're doing the work, the work that we've just spoke about, your podcasts, your meditations, and these are all amazing practices, and absolutely, but we could stay stuck because just feeling that we're absolutely kind of making change and doing the work just by doing these every day. But actually, because you stay there because it's safe, you feel safe. Unfortunately, when you start to action it, that's where you become vulnerable, and that's where it becomes hard. And that's why, unfortunately, the majority of us do get stuck. Do get stuck at that stage. Sorry, Carrie.
No, I was just saying it's not easy. We're certainly not sitting here judging. Some people may never be able to make those changes that they want to because it just feels too insurmountable for them. And that's okay. There's no judgment here. But I think the whole point of what we do and what we're trying to do in our own lives is help. The fundamental goal here is to help people, support them, live the best life that they can do, the most authentic life that they can do. And that is not going to be easy. None of it is going to be easy. So, there is no judgment. If you're sat there going, yeah, okay, well, I am aware. I am aware that this isn't working for me. I'm aware, but I don't think I've got it in me yet to make those changes. Well, that's okay. You have to support your mental health and your well-being and everything. There are a multitude of facets of things that build into that. But just by kind of making some small changes, that can lead to big changes. So, but we hear you. It isn't always easy. Well, it's never easy. No, sorry, Jed. I'm completely there you go.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think as well, it's knowing where to begin. Yeah. So for somebody, like myself, who is a people pleaser, and we've spoke about this before, and I definitely struggle with boundary setting. So for me, all those things that we spoke about, I hate journaling. It does nothing for me. I find it I've tried it because it's very much recommended and there's loads of people that thrive on it. Kels finds that really beneficial. For me, absolutely not. But I do love my gratitude. So getting my energy up in the morning, if I just on the way home, it's like habit stacking. So to make it fit in life. So on the way back from the school run, I will sit and I will just list, 5 things I am really grateful for. And that does kind of get you back in that little bit more of a high vibe mindset. I do love meditation. I find it hard because my ADHD brain struggles to switch off, which is more the reason for me to do it. Not because, don't get me wrong, I would love to sometimes connect, and I do always ask for guidance, and things, but sometimes actually just focusing on breath and just getting out of your own head and trying to just listen, on a journey, a guided meditation is really beneficial for me because it kind of just allows myself to recoup. That, as much as I find it hard, and some days I can absolutely get absorbed and go on this wonderful meditation, and others I just cannot stop thinking about the mountain of washing that I should be doing or the email that I haven't sent, but it's still showing up and just trying to incorporate that kind of, not daily necessarily, but a few times a week to give myself that time to switch off. I do love an oracle card because I love picking them and asking for guidance, as I do EFT tapping when I find that I'm all over the and gone properly overwhelmed. But it's homing in on those few, something that just little habits that you can incorporate and habit stack into your everyday life. And I think it's the habit stacking that actually is more likely to kind of have the actions. I was saying to Kel before we started this that Harry had the dentist today. And he always gets a grilling about his teeth, but actually he's come up with a brilliant solution that he brushes his teeth in the shower and then he doesn't forget to do them. And so the dentist then was like, brilliant, you've nailed down your brushing of your teeth, every evening, but I want you to start doing it in the morning. And he's like, what? So I've got to start showering in the morning as well? And she's like, no, you just need to brush your teeth. He's like, yeah, but I'm gonna have to shower because I brush my teeth in the shower because that's how I remember to brush my teeth. And I was like, he habit stacks. And I think actually it is proven that this is a thing where we almost need to, whatever action or habit we're trying to do or increment, we need to kind of, if you can stack it onto an existing habit, like brushing your teeth or whatever we all do every morning, having your morning coffee, sit, do 5 gratitudes in your head. You don't even need to write them down, just get that vibe going. That is really beneficial. And then it's kind of starting to get uncomfortable. So overwhelm for me is huge. I get frazzled and it's all my own doing because I have a real hard problem with saying no. So actually that is the next part, is that when somebody comes to me and says, can you do, or are you available for, rather than me automatically go, yes, no problem, absolutely fine, without even registering in my head, even if that is possible, because I would make it happen because I've now said yes, because the fear is that if I say no, then I'm going to look really unhelpful, or they're not going to like me, or I'm letting people down. You always, it's ingrained in me, you put others first, you're selfish for prioritizing yourself, whatever, which we now know isn't the truth. But actually for me, the first thing was really saying, rather than automatically going, yes, it is, leave it with me, I'll come back to you. And that was it's such a small thing to do, but to automatically override that yes with I will come back to you, to give myself that pause, then I can go away and actually think, can I accommodate this? Because obviously I don't want to, I'm not saying I don't help anybody, but actually rather than to my own detriment, is this going to be okay with me? Can I do this? Is whatever. It gives you that pause, and straight away you're like, oh, but after a while you realize the people still talk to you, they don't hate you, the world, we haven't died, nobody's died in all this just because you've said, hang on, let me think about this. And it's those type of moments, we're talking really small little changes, but they are little actions that start to build, that then comes the change, until you get to the point when you automatically go, leave it with me, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and it does work. We were again, I refer back to my learnings of counselling, and one of my fellow peers was sort of saying, I get really anxious before I go off and do this certain hobby, and it's crippling me, and our tutor, who's been doing this for many years, said it really is about retraining your brain. You need to tell yourself, I can do nothing about this in this moment. And we're all like, oh, does that work? And she's like, yes, but it takes commitment. And again, we're back to there where you have to continue to feed your brain these things. So if you are sick of people pleasing, or you are sick of getting anxious about going to the school, or whatever that looks like, and you lie there in bed at night worrying about these things, every single night you need to say to yourself, I could do nothing about this now. I could do nothing about this now. And slowly your brain will retrain itself. But you do have to, it is about commitment, and it is about putting the work in. And I think I'm going to be quite brutal here in that, sometimes we can dress all these things up. I'm going to counselling, and and this is all wonderful stuff to be doing. I am not discouraging it. I'm a huge advocate for doing this kind of work, because it does bring about these light bulb moments. But you have got to put the action in. There is no movement without action. And I'm a big believer in manifestation. I'm sure we'll do a great big session on that. And I'm a big believer in life paths and alignment, and what will be. But I am also a big believer in that if you are unhappy in a certain situation, you're not a tree, you can move. And that has to happen. So how uncomfortable are you in the situation? And maybe you're not uncomfortable. And that in itself is something for you to kind of think about. So yeah, again, we're all trying to do this work, but are we moving from it? Or is that even the goal? You may be sitting here and saying, yeah, but Kelly and Jodie, that's great, but I don't want things to change in my life. I just enjoy doing these things because it lifts me up or it makes me feel better. Great. If that's your goal, great. But listen to your intuition here. Are you really happy? You know, and that's a big word and that's a big sentiment. But when you sit with your gut, are you really happy with where you are, or would you like there to be some movement? And that's these questions. And as long as you're happy, that is all that matters. Doesn't matter what we say or anybody else says. But I guess this conversation is for the people who maybe go, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and you know, that's great, that's really great. But where is the action? You know.
And 9 times out of 10, we can kid ourselves that we don't quite know what the action is. But I think 9 times out of 10, we do. I think most people deep down will know what aligned action they need to take. But obviously, again, we go back to being uncomfortable, vulnerable. Or you want to get to the point where you're 100%, you know, confident to do that. But actually, that never, ever comes. Confidence comes after the action. By doing the action builds the confidence.
Yes.
You're never going to get the confidence or the comfortableness before taking it. It will never ever work. You will just forever put it off. So yeah, it's if anybody is waiting, you know, if people, you know, if anybody else is trying to just, you know, if there's situations that aren't working for them, and there is. Some people have real big things that they want to kind of improve, change. Others, they're just micro little things, you know, but whatever it is, it's all relevant to that person. But deep down, we will all know, you know, what it is we need to change. And then we need to kind of work out tiny little manageable steps on how we're going to do that. Like I said, the first koi could be just literally trying to teach yourself to not automatically say yes.
Is that what you're working on then, Jo? So if there's something that you would say you were working towards out of your comfort zone and moving towards?
Self-confidence is a huge thing for me. And I, through my kinesiology training, my kind of mentor, tutor, my, you know, therapist once said to me, because I apologize for everything automatically, everybody, it could be a situation that's nothing to do with me, but if I'm present, I will automatically go, oh God, I'm really sorry. Somebody could barge into me in a pub, hit me flying, and I'd be like, I'm so sorry, people, you know. And she was like, why are you constantly apologizing? And it was a technique where you can do the muscle testing and you can go back kind of almost through the years to childhood, wherever, you know, and to find out where this has come from. And then you have to come up with a phrase. And it takes a minute to get that phrase right, because it really has to kind of trigger you inside. It has to hit a real nerve, and you'll know when it's right because the muscle reacts. And eventually we got there, and she said to me, I had to say to myself along the lines of, I'm really sorry for apologizing for my existence. I felt the need to apologize for being here, for being me, for being about, for being in any situation. You know, I felt, I don't know, I had to just apologize to anybody within my presence for being me. And it was right, because it made my stomach flip. It made me feel sick. And then I burst into tears. And that's when I knew I had real kind of deep rooted self kind of worth issues. Yeah. So, and that's always a journey for me, self-confidence. But actually by doing this podcast is actually a prime example of doing the action before feeling comfortable comes into play. Because I don't know about you, but we're on episode 4 now, we're nearly pros, but I'm feeling more comfortable than I did in the first episode. But I was never going to be ready to do this ever. We have taken the action and we've just thrown caution to the wind and thought, bugger it, let's just do it for our own entertainment, our own fun. to absolutely see what's out there, to get our messages across, but mainly let's just start, and we'll work it out, and we'll refine it as we go. That was a huge big example for me of doing the action, because I would never have got myself to a place where I was ever going to confidently do this. But by doing it, I will get more confident at doing it.
That's awesome.
So that's my thing. And then I think the next thing will be trying to leave the family business that I've been trying to leave for about 5-10 years, and have the confidence that I can go it alone, and I'm worthy of doing that.
Yeah.
How about you?
That's worthy is definitely. It's a really weird thing for me, because I believe in myself. I know I've got this great strength and this great courage, and I think I'm all right. I'm kind of, but I think I'm there with that. And then I find myself in these situations where I'm wanting that from other people. I'm wanting the compliment, or I'm wanting the validation that I'm doing a good job, or, I look attractive, or and as I'm kind of waiting for those nuggets, even in myself, I'm going, Kelly, you don't need to hear this. You're good. And if somebody doesn't get that or see, that's not anybody's fault. It just means that the alignment maybe isn't there, but you don't need that from somebody else. I am so sick of wanting validation from other people to tell me that I am good enough. And
I think that's a biggie, actually.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is for a lot of people out there, and we all know that it comes from various experiences that we've had in life, and things that we've done and been, and but I'm irritating myself. When you just think, oh, come on, you sat there preaching this to people, and that's what the circle sessions. I'm sat there telling people, don't be silly, you're worth this. But one thing I have learned, again, through my counselling, you'll all get sick of it, it'll be my tagline, is that you can sit there and say to somebody, to their blue in the face, you're gorgeous, you're attractive, you're brilliant, you've got a great figure. But unless that person believes it themselves, it makes not a bit of difference. So that's my thing, Jo. That's what I've got to take the action on. I'm just not quite sure how to get there. So if anybody else has really kind of nailed that, please comment, please let me know, because I am really open to suggestions on that.
I think you've made far more progress with that than you're giving yourself credit for, actually. If you think back a year ago and things, and I think we all need to do that. I think we all need to sometimes reflect back and actually acknowledge how far we have come on things. And
that's true.
Progress isn't it's not a constant kind of, it can be up and down.
It's not a linear process.
It's not. It's peaks and troughs. And I think it's very common as well that we can all kind of make a real big peak, and we're like, yeah, I'm much better with this now, and I'm feeling much better about that, and I've got that situation under control, or this is working better for me. And then it's almost like the universe comes along with a beautiful situation to just pop up out of nowhere to say, so now we're going to test that.
Yeah.
In this situation, are you going to go back to old ways, or go back on changes, or are you going to start to change your mind or query decisions that you've made, or are you 100% as comfortable and as confident in this as you think you are? And it's almost like it's that last little test of, are you really there?
Yeah, and something I've learned as well is actually it doesn't happen. I won't just wake up one day and go, I'm validating myself today, I feel great. But what you realize is that every time you get up a bit quicker from those things that get you down, that is you building your resilience. So where something might have triggered you before and you'd have been wiped out for days on a rampage, that they said this, they didn't tell me that, blah, blah, blah. It becomes one day to one night to 1 hour, till eventually those things don't bother you. So I think that was a really good reminder, actually, Jo. Thank you.
And I think as well, you need, to be able to kind of, you see a lot on it about kind of change in action, and then you need to almost be able to measure your progress. Now, obviously, if you're, the goal is to lose weight or whatever, that's easily measurable. You just hop on the scales. But for a lot of people, for a lot of us, that's not really the forefront of what we're trying to do. And it's things that it's very much harder to kind of think, well, how am I going to, see the progress? But exactly what you've said, it is how things like how you recover quicker from certain situations. Before, did they send you into a 3-day spiral, and actually now within an hour you can kind of re-regulate, get yourself back and move forwards with that. Whether you have automatically noticed in certain situations that you start to trust your judgment a bit more, or you're starting to speak up a bit more within a meeting without having to really pluck up the courage to do that. All these things are good, measurable little nuggets of you are making progress. It doesn't have to be big, huge kind of transformations. It's I think we're forever transforming, we're forever changing, and actually it always comes in small little nuggets all the way through our life. There's constant little change, and it's small measures, but it's still, it's that whole ladder thing, isn't it?
Small steps
absolutely
get you higher.
Definitely. And it's acknowledging those things, definitely. So to end up, have you got anything else you want to say?
No, I think, I've had my counselling session. Thank you very much, everybody. And hopefully you don't think I'm too horrific after this, but I'm nothing if not honest. So
I don't think you've said anything that none of us, we're all human. So absolutely. So I'm going to do the key takeaways for today because Kels normally does them. But I have got them. I've got some little bullet points, so I will need to just refer to those. So apologies if I'm looking away. But I think the main thing is what we've said is it's making action smaller. So while if your goal is to get a bit fitter, I know this. This is something you've mentioned, Kels,
constantly every year
that you'd like to get a bit fitter or just be a bit more active. We have this thing, 10,000 steps is the key thing apparently, but actually if you're only on average doing 2,000, to do 5 times that is probably a bit unrealistic. So it's having small actions, and it's thinking about maybe from rather than what do I need to do, but okay, in this given situation, what would a fit person do? So it could be, I'm going to take the stairs rather than the lift. It's those small little habits that you just need to kind of, if you're on the 10th floor somewhere, and maybe still take the lift, but it's just trying to think rather than, right, I've got to hit 10,000 a day or start running 5K or go smaller than that. 10-minute walk in your lunch break.
Just standing up.
Yeah. If you have a Apple Watch, standing can be a thing.
Right. I need to get myself an Apple Watch.
My watch will say you need to stand. It has a standing goal. Absolutely, anything like that. The desks that you can stand off, but we're not talking. You haven't, movement is movement, and so it doesn't have to be some big marathon, but just focus on small little bits that you can easily achieve. Absolutely. Getting a bit clear on what is the right next step for you. That's quite hard to kind of actually. I have loads of big aspirations, but I don't have a clear idea always on where I'm heading or what I'm trying to achieve. And I think if we can get a little bit clearer on the end goal, then it's going to be easier to navigate towards that and break it down into more manageable steps. So definitely try and get as crystal clear and as specific as you can on what it is. Not even that it's not even about what we want, it's about how we want to feel, how we want our life to look, that work-life balance, whatever, but a lot of it comes from a feeling rather than what we're trying to obtain. It isn't always about materialistic stuff or anything. It can be about that main feeling of how you want to live your day-to-day life. Create evidence. Our brains believe evidence far more than they will affirmations that you are just telling yourself or listening to. If you don't truly believe it, it's going to be very hard for your brain to kind of react to that. So create evidence, which goes back to just measuring, noticing these small little things, of whether you recover from a situation better than you once would, or you're not as triggered by some flippant comment, or you have the confidence just to raise your own opinion in any given situation, discussion, meeting, whatever, and come away and just give yourself a nice little pat on the back for that, because that is evidence-based and the brain will really kind of thrive on that, definitely. 5-minute rule. I know I just said about doing the walk for 10 minutes, but 5 minutes, whatever it is that you're trying to do, go for a 5-minute walk. Do breathing for 5 minutes, sit deep, just sit with your own thoughts for 5 minutes, like whatever it is, spend 5 minutes just trying to maybe, if you're trying to eat a bit healthier, maybe spend 5 minutes thinking of how you can get a little bit more, fruit and veg, supplementation, whatever, but just doesn't have to consume your whole day. Just give yourself 5 minutes. to focus on that. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think that's the theme that's going to run through
Yeah.
all of our.
You will
kind
never
of
feel
episodes.
ready. You will never feel ready. So you have got to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and you've got to stop waiting to be ready, because you never, ever will. As I've just said, celebrate the tiny wins and just, be kind to yourself.
And we'd love to hear from you. Kind of what is going on with you guys that you are wanting but you're stuck with, and it would be really great. I mean, we love that you listen to us blurbering on, but we'd really love to hear from you guys as well, as to kind of your thoughts around these things, or what you might be stuck with, or little nuggets that you have that have helped you move forward on your journey. So please do share all that with us as well.
Yeah, definitely. And if there's things that people do kind of want, we're very much open to topic suggestions, whatever that may look like. We can we're very much open on kind of what you guys would like to listen to, as much as what we're prepared to talk about, because we know what lights us up, and we know but it's also, I think, a lot of the enjoyment for us is knowing that we're giving value in some way, and we're actually helping people. That's the end goal, is to not only be highly entertaining, we think anyway, but it's for people to take value from the episodes. So if this is, if the episodes aren't looking how you'd quite like, or you've got suggestions on what you think, we're open to kind of improvements, or certain topics that you'd like to cover more, or whether you want to go a bit more into like spiritual work, things like that,
which I think we'll do, won't we?
We'll
kind of,
we're only on episode 4.
We're on an evolving journey.
We
There'll be, before you know it, there will be crystals and tarot cards thrown everywhere with a wild abandon.
Absolutely. This is such early days, and we've kind of got quite a good chunk mapped out already, but we're always open to suggestion.
So thank you for listening to us. Thank you for coming on our journey as much as yours. This is you will hear a lot of truths from us, a lot of nitty gritty. We have both had crazy lives, and I feel like probably lived a lot of lives already in our years. And we want to share that, because a lot of people out there will go, yeah, I get that, or I understand that. So thank you so much for being with us on our journey. Right.
Enjoy the rest of your week and have a wonderful weekend. We're nearly there.
Yeah, we'll speak to you next week. Awesome. Cheers.
Bye.